In Memphis, Tennessee, a horrible crime terrified local residents. Most never heard the young mother's screams, but they felt the loss. As local authorities searched for the perpetrator, they found many who had motive. Investigators were forced to consider whether this was a random act of violence or a crime of deliberate calculation. When a wealthy young woman was abducted in front of her in-laws' home, the police had no shortage of suspects. The 25-year-old victim left behind a tumultuous marriage, an ex-husband, and old boyfriends. All were on the FBI's short list. I am Dalton Reese, former head of the FBI's New York office. As suspects were interviewed, the case grew no clearer. To find the woman and her abductor, investigators would first have to determine the motive. Tunica County, Mississippi, just south of Memphis, Tennessee, is America's third-largest gambling destination. 25-year-old Maren Cole had recently become one of the regulars. The housewife from nearby Memphis visited her favorite casino. Maren was having a good night. She managed to turn $500 into $5,000 at the high-stakes blackjack table. She cashed out and headed home. When players win big, most casinos provide a security escort to protect customers from theft. This casino was no exception. Upon Maren's request, a guard followed her to the parking area. It was an hour's drive to Maren's home in Memphis through secluded roads. She knew the route well. She loved to win, but she could afford to lose. Less than a year earlier, she had married her boss, a multimillionaire who was 33 years her senior. Earlier that evening, she had dropped off her 3 young children from her previous marriage at the home of their grandparents in northeast Memphis. When Maren pulled into the grandparents' driveway to pick up her children, she needed to get them off to school on time. Inside the house, Maren's former in-laws were awakened by a piercing scream. Her former father-in-law rushed to the window and saw Maren struggling with someone in a baseball cap. He raced outside. Neighbors also heard the commotion and witnessed the crime. Within seconds, the mother of 3 had been abducted less than 50 feet from the front door. The distraught grandfather called 911. Memphis police were immediately dispatched. In kidnapping cases, a quick response can mean the difference between life and death. Police arrived within minutes and interviewed Maren's former father-in-law. Memphis Police Captain Tristan Hale, a sergeant at the time, recalls that the shaken man did his best to describe what he had seen. The ex-father-in-law heard the commotion and watched a car drive away. Other neighbors on the street also looked out, saw the car leave, and gave a description of the driver and the vehicle. Despite the dim light, witnesses agreed that the driver had worn a red baseball cap. Their descriptions of the car varied. Some called it dark-colored and sporty. Another was certain it was a maroon Chevy Beretta. None could describe the driver's face. On the driveway close to the street, police found 2 metal buttons assumed to have been torn from Maren's clothing. Nearby, they recovered a single artificial fingernail. The victim's car was searched, but nothing suggested the identity of her abductor or where Maren might be. Her ex-father-in-law had seen Maren earlier that evening when she dropped off the children. He and his wife had agreed to babysit while Maren celebrated her new husband's birthday at the casino. Their former daughter-in-law had divorced their son less than a year before. Still, the relationship remained amicable, and she visited regularly with the children. The former father-in-law told police the name of the casino where Maren and her new husband liked to play. The casino confirmed she had been there and won $5,000, but no one could say whether she had been with anyone in particular. News that the mother of 3 had been abducted just steps from where her children slept horrified local residents. Memphis District Attorney Baron Quill noted that she appeared deeply conscious of her children's upbringing, returning to Memphis specifically to make certain they reached school on time. Memphis police questioned Maren's ex-husband, the father of her 3 children. He was at work when the abduction occurred in front of his parents' home. Though his relationship with Maren had been stormy, they had remained married for nearly 8 years. They finally divorced after she fell in love with her present husband. Police were reluctant to eliminate him so early, even though his alibi was solid. No one ever hears of a good divorce. She still made him pay alimony, even though she was married to a wealthy man. Police turned to her present husband for more information. Because he was a multi-millionaire, they considered the possibility that Maren had been kidnapped for ransom. He owned a large security company in Memphis and was well known. Everyone wanted to help him. Being wealthy made her a prime target for a ransom kidnapping. So far, he had received no call or letter. He had been distraught since being woken with the news of his wife's abduction. Regrettably, the last time they had spoken that night, they had argued. It was his 58th birthday, and his teenage daughters from a previous marriage had stopped by to celebrate. That same evening, Maren had planned to take him to the casino. After dropping off her children, she called to say she was on the way to pick him up. He told her he was not ready. His daughters were there, and he wanted more time with them. Maren became angry, feeling he was putting his children ahead of their plans. He said he could be ready in half an hour, but she hung up. I expected she would cool down and come for him. When he tried to call later, she did not answer. He wondered whether the difference in their ages was simply too great. Police asked if he knew anyone who might want to harm Maren. He mentioned an ex-boyfriend against whom Maren had filed harassment charges a year earlier. He believed the man drove a Chevy Beretta. At headquarters, police checked with the DMV but found no records that the ex-boyfriend or any of his family owned such a car. A criminal background check confirmed that a judge had ordered the former lover to have no contact with Maren for the past year. Investigators went to question him, but he was not at home and had not appeared for work. His sister lived a few blocks from the abduction site. She reported seeing a suspicious car drive past her house that night. She was on the porch around the time of the crime when a maroon Chevy Beretta sped by, heading out of the neighborhood. At first, she did not recognize the driver. Later, when she saw a photo of Maren's wealthy husband in a news report, she became certain it was him. Though Memphis police had first considered a ransom kidnapping, they now examined another possibility. Because of her marriage to a wealthy man and the difference in their ages, something could have been done to get rid of her. They simply did not know, so they tried to cover every angle. Memphis police asked Maren's husband to provide a formal statement. With his lawyer present, he described their relationship. Police knew he had met Maren while she was still married and working at the security company he owned. She worked for him, but soon the relationship turned personal. Their romance led to marriage, yet the magic did not last. 9 months later, they began negotiating a post-nuptial agreement, outlining terms if the troubled union ended. Both had previous marriages that ended in divorce, and Maren needed certainty that she would retain custody of her children. They filed the agreement only 10 days before the abduction. The husband emphasized that it was his wife who had wanted the document. Money was not the issue, he claimed, because they kept separate bank accounts. When police asked, he agreed to reinforce his statement with a polygraph. To cover all possibilities, police checked local morgues, jails, and hospitals. After a week, investigators still had no solid leads. Memphis police received dozens of calls from residents. Most were well-intentioned, but unproductive. All had to be checked. One call came from a woman named Celeste Mercer in nearby Clarksdale, Mississippi, 80 miles south of Memphis. The abduction had been reported in the paper and on the news, along with a description of the car. She contacted Memphis police saying she thought her husband might be involved because of the vehicle description. She told Mississippi authorities that her husband, Donovan, might fit the suspect description. The day after the crime was reported, he had worn a red cap and left town in their red Chevy Beretta to visit his mother. The couple had been fighting. Police asked her to have him call when he returned. They were not optimistic. The report sounded like a domestic dispute unrelated to the crime. Police responded to another call from a concerned citizen. At a casino in Tunica County, a witness believed he had spotted Maren Cole dressed as a casino employee. When an officer approached her, it proved a case of mistaken identity, one more false lead among hundreds that frustrated the investigation. After 2 weeks of searching, local investigators were no closer to finding the missing mother of 3. Her family clung only to the hope that she was still alive. Memphis police continued their search for 25-year-old Maren Cole, abducted from in front of her former in-laws' home. Investigators had questioned her wealthy husband, past lovers, and area residents, yet none offered clues. In any investigation, authorities try first to eliminate those closest to the victim. After more than 2 weeks, Captain Tristan Hale feared time was running out. With her past boyfriends and lovers, they simply did not know what had happened, and each passing day made the chance of finding her alive slimmer. Maren's ex-boyfriend finally came in for questioning. He had only recently completed a year-long probation for harassment charges against her. He claimed he had been asleep at his mother's house at the time of the abduction. According to him, he avoided Marin as his probation required, yet she continued to call, complaining that she was unhappy in her new marriage. He said he would need to speak with his lawyer before agreeing to a polygraph. He remained a potential suspect. But as with Marin's husband, no hard evidence existed to prove or disprove his involvement. Then, 40 miles south of the abduction site, sheriffs in DeSoto County, Mississippi, were called to a rural plot of land in the town of Eudora. Two people inspecting their new property noticed a strong odor and discovered a woman's decomposing body. Crime scene technicians set up a grid and conducted a line search, labeling and recording every item as they drew closer. 15 feet away, they found a woman's high-heeled shoe. Closer still, they marked another. DeSoto sheriffs found no local missing woman reports and broadened the search to larger towns and cities. When they contacted Memphis authorities, they learned that a 25-year-old mother of 3 named Marin Cole had been missing for more than 2 weeks. She was blonde, approximately 5 feet 5 inches tall, 130 pounds, had a small tattoo, and was last seen wearing a dress, high heels, a jacket with metal buttons, and pink artificial fingernails. That description fit the body, but an autopsy was needed to confirm identity and cause of death. The medical examiner determined the victim had been killed by a single .25 caliber bullet to the right temple. Her clothes were removed and preserved for possible trace evidence. The body, dead an estimated 2 to 3 weeks, was too decomposed for visual recognition, yet over the left breast examiners found a small tattoo that remained visible. It read, "I love you, Tristan." Marin Cole had such a tattoo. Dental records compared to X-rays confirmed the identification. This was Marin Cole's body. The abduction was now officially a homicide. In Memphis, Assistant District Attorney Baron Quill was called in. His first task was to narrow the lengthy suspect list police had developed. In Memphis, it was somewhat unusual to have a mystery homicide in which a suspect was not developed quickly or arrested soon after the incident. This case, however, was a true mystery with numerous potential suspects linked to the abduction and killing. The assistant district attorney first called the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation to conduct polygraph examinations that might eliminate suspects. He also contacted the FBI because the body had been found across the state line. Supervisory Special Agent Cale Rivera from the FBI's Memphis field office was assigned as case agent. Local authorities felt they needed additional resources. The case was difficult, crossed jurisdictions, and they wanted the FBI as part of the team. Agent Rivera's experience would help unravel the complexities. Local residents remained fearful that Marin's killer was still free, not knowing if or when he might strike again. The body of 25-year-old Marin Cole, mother of 3, had been found in Eudora, Mississippi, 40 miles from her Memphis home. The FBI, together with state and local investigators, needed to shorten the suspect list that included Marin's husband and past lovers. Assistant District Attorney Baron Quill hoped polygraphs would focus the search. The investigation was difficult because of the many suspects. Throughout the victim's life, she had been divorced, and in any murder case, investigators naturally focus on relatives, acquaintances, husbands, or any relationship that might lead back to a dispute or domestic violence. Tennessee authorities tested several of Marin's former lovers. They asked about their whereabouts on the night of the abduction and whether they had abducted or killed her. All denied involvement. The test showed no deception. Investigators corroborated their alibis and eliminated them. They also polygraphed the witness, who claimed to have seen Marin's current husband driving a maroon Chevy Beretta in the neighborhood moments before the abduction, the same type of vehicle other witnesses had described. The woman was found to be deceptive. Police now believed her claim was false. They also knew Marin's brief marriage to her wealthy husband had been rocky. They wanted to confirm once and for all that he had not been involved. The crime occurred in the early morning hours. The husband said he had gone to bed alone and had no one to corroborate his presence. That lack of alibi was difficult to overcome. Investigators asked him to take a polygraph. Though he had previously agreed, on his lawyer's advice, he declined. Heart medication he was taking might produce a false reading, the lawyer said. For Captain Hale, the refusal only deepened suspicion. If the man had nothing to do with the crime, why would he refuse to cooperate? As a homicide detective, the captain found the refusal made him more suspicious still. In terms of incriminating evidence, the investigation stood still. Supervisory Special Agent Cale Rivera hoped to refocus by examining leads that might have been overlooked. Investigators had to consider every possibility and avoid racing too far down speculative roads about the kind of person the killer might be or what relationship, if any, he had to the victim. They needed to identify what other possibilities still required exploration. One possibility, though not promising, was Celeste Mercer, who had earlier reported that her husband might match the vague suspect description. Now she was less certain. She told police she had overreacted, reinforcing the belief that she had simply been trying to get back at her husband for leaving her. She said he had left town after marital disputes. Investigators felt the report might be nothing more than sour grapes. They did not know how much weight to give her conflicting, half-hearted story. Though her husband was not a serious suspect, police still wanted to speak with him. A bulletin was issued for Donovan Pryor, wanted for questioning in Tennessee. FBI agents and Tennessee investigators met to review casino surveillance footage of the blackjack table where Marin had won the now-missing $5,000. Her growing pile of chips would certainly have made her an attractive target. They watched the tape for any sign of a stalker. Yet Agent Rivera questioned why a killer would wait so long to act. Marin had been winning for some time late at night. Several factors made her visit high risk, yet the abduction occurred nearly an hour to an hour and a half after she left the casino. Investigators first had to determine whether the casino visit had anything to do with the crime at all. The tape showed Marin but was inadequate to reveal whether she was being followed. Investigators were no closer to the truth. Then the investigation veered in an unexpected direction. Near Hebronville, Texas, 750 miles from where Marin was forced into a car described as a Chevy Beretta. A vehicle matching that description erratically swerved away from a border checkpoint. The car carried Mississippi plates. A patrol guard raced after it, believing the driver might be a border jumper or smuggler. Caught at a dead end, the suspect resisted, then backed down when confronted by the agent's gun. He had 14 $100 bills in his pocket. He gave his name as Donovan Pryor but held no driver's license. A cursory search revealed no illegal drugs or aliens, yet in the trunk agents recovered a stolen weapon registered in Arkansas. The car was locked and left under armed guard until FBI agents could conduct a thorough search. Special Agent Soren Blake from the Greater Texas Field Office was contacted because assaulting a Border Patrol officer is a federal offense. Agent Blake confirmed the driver's identity after learning Donovan Pryor had been involved in another altercation at the Mexican border that same day. U.S. Customs officials reported that an individual had fled and left several pieces of identification on the counter. Agents now possess those documents. A license plate check showed the vehicle was registered to his wife Celeste in Clarksdale, Mississippi. Agent Blake also discovered that Donovan Pryor had a violent past and was currently wanted for questioning in the abduction and murder of Marin Cole. After contacting Memphis authorities, Agent Blake traveled to Hebronville to process the car on site. The Chevy Beretta matched the vehicle witnesses had described. Agents hoped something inside would link the car and Pryor to the murder. A sheet and pillowcase along with the trunk liner were bagged as evidence. When retrieving such items, investigators never know what laboratory results will ultimately show. They simply collect the best and most evidence possible and let the lab do its work. The car's interior appeared recently cleaned and vacuumed, lowering hopes of finding useful material. Hundreds of miles from the nearest evidence response team, Agent Blake improvised with the tools at hand. To search for hairs and fibers in the back seat, he used an unopened lint roller of the type one might use on a suit. Initially obscured by the front seat, he found a pink artificial fingernail on the floor, similar to those the victim had worn at the time of her abduction. Memphis prosecutor Baron Quill believed this could be the clue that placed Marin Cole inside Pryor's car. Agent Blake had called to report the fingernail found exactly where witnesses said the victim had been forced into the back seat. Memphis authorities traveled to Laredo to question Donovan Pryor about the murder. He claimed he knew nothing beyond what he had heard on the news. He admitted being at the casino that night, but said he had left early to check on a terminally ill neighbor. While the interview continued, investigators spoke with the neighbor in Clarksdale, who denied that Pryor had been there at that time. Investigators were not yet fully convinced Pryor was their man, yet the false alibi raised suspicion. The neighbor was very ill and might simply have been mistaken about other visits. Investigators hoped Pryor's wife Celeste might corroborate or refute the neighbor's statement. She had initially told police her husband fit the description of the man in the red baseball cap. Now she added that he made frequent trips to the casino where the victim spent her last night. Still, she did not know whether he had visited the neighbor and denied that her husband had anything to do with the abduction and murder. Investigators feared they might be wasting time. FBI Special Agent Cale Rivera was not so sure. They sensed Celeste's ambivalence. She had come forward, even with her half-hearted story, for a reason. There was more she needed to tell. Agent Rivera realized she would need to invest a great deal of time to earn Celeste's trust. As the dialogue continued over several weeks, the FBI contacted Rylan Cole, director of surveillance at the casino where the victim had gambled. He was asked to confirm whether Donovan Pryor had been recorded that same night on any of the 600 cameras covering the 95,000 square foot floor. Agent Rivera provided a basic description of clothing the suspect might have worn: shoe color, jeans, jacket type, and possibly a ball cap. On any given day, 3,000 to 10,000 people move through a casino. Cole and his team searched hundreds of hours of footage looking for a man in a red baseball cap and yellow shirt, focusing especially on the blackjack table where Marin spent most of the night. If a suspect remains stationary, the task is easier, yet a casino is an exciting place where people wander constantly from slot machines to restaurants to table games. They could not locate the individual. Investigators returned to Celeste Mercer for more detail about her husband's activities that night. They did everything possible to make her feel comfortable. One of her neighbors, a police officer, provided reassurance and support. She was a woman torn between empathy for the victim and loyalty to her husband. She was in love with this man. It was difficult for her to accept that the victim had been a mother of 3 young children. Celeste herself was a mother of 3 and felt a deep connection to Marin. Slowly, she worked through her internal conflict and began to open up, revealing what life at home with Donovan Pryor had been like. He ruled the house. Her 3 children from previous marriages were afraid of him. Celeste admitted she was afraid too. He kept a bell on his chair. When he rang it, she came running. Despite his controlling temper, her feelings for him ran deep. She had lived under his thumb for 4 or 5 years. That was the life she knew. It was not familiar to her to break with him or to be disloyal. Despite her fear, Celeste continued to talk. On the day Marin Cole was abducted, Donovan came home acting nervous. Celeste was angry because she believed he had spent the night with another woman. She noticed blood on his shirt and a cut on his arm. He claimed he had fallen at a casino. Celeste did not believe him, yet she did not press the issue. For the moment, she refused to say more, and neither would her husband. Without something stronger, Prosecutor Baron Quill could not press charges against Donovan Pryor. They still had nothing concrete linking him to the crime, only instinct. Laboratory results had not yet returned. Investigators hoped the FBI would reinforce their growing conviction that Donovan Pryor was responsible for leaving Marin Cole's children motherless. After Pryor was indicted for assaulting a Border Patrol officer in Texas, the FBI and Memphis investigators suspected he was also responsible for the murder of the 25-year-old mother of 3. Lacking physical evidence, Prosecutor Quill could not yet charge him or know for certain whether one of the victim's former lovers had hired him. There was always that possibility. The way she was killed and the manner of the abduction suggested planning rather than a random act. Other suspects appeared to have motive, jealousy, rage, or other emotional reasons that might drive someone to want another person dead. Investigators hoped Celeste Mercer could tell them more. After many meetings over several weeks, she grew more comfortable and finally opened fully to Special Agent Cale Rivera. When she told the story in its entirety, what they heard was a chilling account of her husband's stalking of the victim, the abduction, and the journey to a rural area where he robbed Marin not only of the $5,000 she had won, but of the jewelry she was wearing. Celeste's story was strong, yet without corroborating evidence, it would not be enough to convict or even indict Donovan Pryor for murder. Trying to help, she told investigators that her husband had thrown the murder weapon, a handgun, into an abandoned canal near the casino in Mississippi. Captain Tristan Hale accompanied local divers to search for the pistol. They dove into the hole and crawled inch by inch. They never located it. Celeste then said he had thrown it into the river about 100 yards away. The current there was too swift for anyone to dive. The failure left investigators with more doubt and no corroboration that Celeste was telling the truth. The suspect's wife also mentioned a school bus driver from Mississippi whom her husband believed had seen him near the place he dumped Marin's body. Police tracked down the driver, who confirmed the story. About 2 hours after Marin Cole was abducted, the driver noticed a maroon Chevy Beretta backing down the dirt roadway of the vacant property where the body was later found. He remembered it because the land had been vacant for so long. He did not see who was inside and did not get a license plate, yet he clearly noticed the car. Searching for further corroboration, investigators returned to Ryland Cole at the casino. This time, Celeste provided specific locations where her husband might have appeared. The surveillance team recreated a walkthrough of the routes a suspect would likely take and pulled corresponding tapes. Eventually, they identified the man by his shoes in a particular location. Connecting successive shots, they put legs to the shoes, then identified a person in a distant overhead view walking through the casino. They followed him down an escalator, past the table where the victim was playing, and out the front door on videotape. The footage was compelling and confirmed Donovan Pryor had been inside the casino that night. It did not, however, prove he had abducted or murdered Marin Cole. Hoping for physical evidence that would connect Pryor to the victim, investigators searched behind a tavern in Mississippi where Celeste claimed he had buried the stolen jewelry. The suspect had told her the pieces were wrapped in tinfoil under a couch in the back. Exactly as she described, investigators located a small bundle of foil. Inside, they found pink plastic wrap holding rings that Marin's husband identified as belonging to her. Now they needed to prove forensically that Donovan Pryor had been the one who wrapped them. Investigators went to Pryor's home and searched for the source of the plastic. In the kitchen, they found a roll of pink wrap. They forwarded the roll together with the bundled rings to the laboratory for comparison. While waiting for results, they turned their attention to the pink, artificial fingernail found inside Pryor's car after his arrest in Texas. Autopsy photographs showed at least 2 nails missing from the victim's hand. If the nail from the car matched those remaining on her hand, it would prove Marin had been inside the vehicle. There was a problem. Marin had already been buried, and her husband opposed exhumation. A court hearing was held. Against the husband's wishes, the judge ordered the body disinterred. Investigators retrieved Marin Cole's remains and removed the remaining artificial nails for comparison. The results were negative. The nail in the car was not hers. Investigators hoped the other evidence at the FBI laboratory in Washington, D.C. would yield more promising findings. Inside the tinfoil ball recovered in Mississippi, examiners carefully unwrapped the pink plastic around the rings. To link the rings physically to Donovan Pryor, they compared the plastic to the sample taken from his home. The examining agent determined that while it was not the exact piece torn from the roll, the polymers and dye matched perfectly, proving the wrap had come from that source. It was the first piece of forensic evidence linking Pryor to the victim. The case was by no means complete. More compelling proof came from a single fiber among several found in Pryor's otherwise immaculate car. A dress fiber recovered from the vehicle he was driving that night matched fiber from the dress the victim was wearing. That match was highly significant. Authorities were now convinced Donovan Pryor had murdered Marin Cole, yet they were not certain he had acted alone. They believed it possible that others from her past might claim a motive for wanting her dead. Memphis prosecutor Baron Quill decided to confirm the matter with Pryor himself. Investigators traveled to Laredo to interview the defendant before charging him with the murder. They made clear that if he cooperated and proved someone else had been involved, they would withdraw the request for the death penalty. He provided nothing. Convinced that no one else had taken part, they proceeded to charge him alone. Pryor had possessed ample time to contemplate the crime. He watched Marin for several hours inside the casino, then followed her for another hour back to Memphis. He had every opportunity to change his mind. Instead, he hardened his resolve. He abducted a mother of 3, robbed her, and shot her at point-blank range. The criminal court in Tennessee needed little time to decide his fate. After deliberating only 15 minutes, the jury recommended death for the murder of Marin Cole. Donovan Pryor awaits execution at Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Tennessee.